Hi, and welcome to the FX Podcast. I'm John Montgomery. We've got two guests this week on the FX Podcast. The first is longtime friend of fxguide, Chris Nichols, Director of Special Projects at the Chaos Innovation Lab, and also the host of the SIGGRAPH podcast. He's also co-founder of the recently formed Monstrous Moonshine. Joining us also is Daniel Thron, the other co-founder of Monstrous Moonshine, who has a background as a writer, director, and visual effects artist. Now, the guys cover a lot of subjects, including news about the SIGGRAPH podcast, a look at the recent SIGGRAPH conference, including a discussion about Gaussian Splats, as well as Chaos Arena. They talk about their new venture, Monstrous Moonshine, including where that name came from, how AI is reshaping production post, plus a whole lot more. So let's go ahead and join that conversation now.
Chris, Daniel, thanks so much for joining us. Hey, Chris, the moves are afoot or they're not afoot with you guys. What's happening?
This is very exciting, Mike. I'm super excited. As you know, I've been podcasting almost as long as you have, which is quite a long time. And what was sort of interesting, and it has came up, is that essentially Chaos has been. I've been hosting the SIGGRAPH podcast under Chaos for over 10 years, and there was certain things that I wanted to do with the podcast that Chaos sort of explored what we were trying to achieve and said, what would be great is if you could get complete freedom to do what you want to do with a podcast. And the best way that's going to happen is for you to own it. So they graciously gave me the podcast. So now I own SIGGRAPH, and it's had a great home at Chaos for many years. And I still work for Chaos very much so, but I was very excited about it. So I decided that with the new company that I formed with my good friend Daniel Thron, who's with me, is that we are going to host the podcast under Monstrous Moonshine, which is super exciting.
So Daniel, is Monstrous Moonshine a new company or is that an existing company, or how does it fit?
Well, it's new because Chris and I have worked together for a long time. We've podcasted before on movies, and we love movies, and we love talking about the making movies. But this was the first time we really got to go after like the focus of what we want to be doing together, which is actually making movies and talking about the making of the movies. And so this has been a long time coming, but the company itself is brand new. So
where does the name come from? Sort of like a old David Bowie under the serious moonlight kind of thing going on here.
Yeah, it's a long explanation of it. I encourage people to look up the phrase Monstrous Moonshine. What it is it's a term in mathematics where there are two worlds of mathematics that no one knew were associated until someone was like, I think maybe these bizarre things are connected in some way. They cross over in some way, in this really unexpected way. And when the guy pitched it, everyone was like, no, that's nonsense. There's no way these worlds cross over the way they do. And that's like wishing on moonshine. And then it turned out to be exactly true in this really radical way. And so the idea of disparate worlds crossing over is how we feel about art and technology. It feels like how Chris and I sort of met and overlapped when we were both born within a few days of each other in 1971 and didn't even meet until a decade ago.
And literally this is about like the number 71 is a prime number that is part of the Monstrous group.
Right.
That's how this all kind of started. So we went down a rabbit hole of craziness.
Right.
Okay.
So
super nerdy.
We were born in 71. 71 is the prime number that's part of the name.
Yeah. You can't out-nerd me, right? I got my first undergraduate degree in pure maths. What are the two schools of mathematics that collided?
The Monstrous group is one of them, and the J function, I believe, is the second group.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
They're all part of the number theory groups. Yeah. But we basically, this came about because we were trying to figure out a new name for our company, and we decided, hey, let's go with something with 71. And I was like, wait a minute, 71 is a prime number, and I love prime numbers. And so we looked up as what does 71 do, and it's part of this Monstrous group. So I was like, that sounds cool. And then we went down a rabbit hole, and then suddenly Monstrous Moonshine became this big theory. We were like, that's
the process of coming up with the name was
the
process of coming up with the name was very much emblematic of how we work together. It's just
I
we
love
have
origin stories, right? I absolutely love origin stories. Yeah. We got the name fxguide because I was talking to Jeff Huser on the phone. We're trying to work out what to call it, and we didn't want to make it too specific. We wanted to be, like it was going to be focusing initially on Flame and Autodesk stuff. And we didn't want it to be that specific because we wanted to go broader. And he looked at his coffee table and it had TV Guide and fitting in front of him. And he said, we want something like TV Guide. I'm like FX Guide. And I was like, oh, that'll do.
Yeah, that's how you do it, man.
That's it. That's how it comes.
Like if it hits in the moment, then
if it hits in the moment, it works.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to loop back on what the company is doing and what you're up to in a minute or two. But I wanted to also get from you your take on SIGGRAPH. Now, I was moving house, so I couldn't be there. But I think everyone that couldn't be there would love to get your opinion on what's going on. And after that, we might find out a little bit about what Chaos was showing there. But first, just broadly speaking, how'd you find SIGGRAPH this year, Chris?
I found it fascinating. It was very interesting. There was definitely a mixed bag of feelings that I saw from people, but personally, I found it fascinating. The attendance was, we've seen the attendance of SIGGRAPH. They're definitely not what they used to be in the 90s, for example, right? But that didn't seem to, that seemed to some people like, well, it's not the way it used to be, or the show floor wasn't as big as it used to be. But when I really looked at what they were doing, and go back to SIGGRAPH to its roots, right, which is a very academic root, as I'm sure you're very well aware, the amount of papers that were presented this year was astonishing. I think it was something like over 360 papers that were presented at SIGGRAPH. And you've been to Papers Fast Forward, for example, right? And for those who don't know what that is at the first day of SIGGRAPH, everyone who presents a paper at SIGGRAPH has the opportunity to have 30 seconds to present their paper. And so you sit in an auditorium and you hear a 30-second pitch of every single paper presented.
It's like speed dating with academic papers.
That's exactly a perfect way to put it. Well, this year they had so many papers, they had to cut it down to 20 seconds and it was still 3 hours.
Wow. I mean, so obviously
that is amazing. Yeah.
The dominant theme of the papers at a high level was AI. Obviously, of AI course. Has opened up a huge range.
And a lot of it was coming from China as well.
Yep. Yeah. But I'm interested if we could dive into some of the sort of more, just unpack that a bit, right? Like one of the trends that I really noticed looking at the papers, which I thought was really fascinating and something I've been interested in, is that there seemed to be a real shift to Gaussian splats at the expense of Nerfs. If you go back even 2 or 3 years, there were like tons of Nerf papers, and Nerfs seem to be holding out huge kind of promise. And it's not that that's diminished. It just seems that like the focus,
Gaussian splats are just much more practical. They're much more practical to use.
Did you saw that as well?
I did. And, Chaos even has, embraced Gaussian splats in the way that we're looking at it for rendering. They're just really simple. I mean, if you come back to it, Mike, if you think about what this really was, it all actually starts with Lightro and light fields, right? Like they started this whole thing where they wanted to be able to look at an object and see view-dependent changes from different dimensions. But light fields were so unbelievably expensive and so much redundant information that Nerfs was like, oh, it's like the AI version of light of what a light field is in a lot of ways, but they were still very cumbersome. They still require a lot of energy and to render on the screen. And so but Gaussian splats is so simple. It's so simple. It's just a bunch of point clouds with a little, basically harmonic at the top of it, or a little splat on top of it. So it's pretty, and they work great. They work really, really well. So I see people sort of gravitating towards that because of how lightweight they are. And especially on mobile, right? I think you're going to start to see a lot more people using them on mobile devices as well.
It's interesting that you say that Chaos is looking at it, because there's a couple of worlds here going on, right? Like one of the things is you can capture volumetrically something. And then the question is, obviously in a Nerf, it's being represented by a volume inside the AI, inside the machine learning framework of the engine, and it's from there that I might exit it out as a polygonalized version, but I would have to translate it out as a polygonalized version to then have something. But in in this case, the model is in the machine learning, if that makes sense. In the Gaussian splat, what you're talking about is producing data out of a renderer where the model is already has the ability to polygonally solve the environment. Otherwise, how would you do the render, right? So then it's just an interpretation of how you render it out. Is that right?
Yeah, we just read the data from the Gaussian splat, right? I mean, the AI part of Gaussian splats is in the training. Once it's been trained, there's no AI necessary for the Gaussian splat, right? It just is what it is. So for us, I mean, really, it's just essentially a point cloud with colors that are.
But are you rendering the point cloud as in, if you give me a point cloud, I'll render it, or can you take something and output it? Right, but I'm saying
so there's two things we can do, and that's a good point. So yes, we do render the Gaussian splat as you would normally. However, we're ray tracing it, which is a little different than what other people are doing because it's normally rasterized. But we're ray tracing it, and the reason that becomes important for us is that because we see it as a 3D volume, we bring it in as a 3D object into our scenes, but then we can add a 3D geometry to that, and that 3D geometry will ray trace the Gaussian splat, which is super cool and allows us to do more things with the Gaussian splat than just display it, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing, part of the question is, do we generate Gaussian splats? And yes, that has been part of our research in labs. In fact, that was Vlado himself who toyed around and coded the first version of this, which is essentially to generate a Gaussian splat natively within the renderer. So if you have a 3D scene that you can render out a Gaussian splat. And you don't do that by rendering a bunch of images and then using the AI. You actually do it all as one as a ray tracing exercise.
Okay, so just to be clear about this, and we'll just use the second case that you described first. So in that situation where you're rendering a Gaussian splat, is it still got the properties, for those people that are trying to get their head around this, is it still got the properties that as I move my viewing point, so too the lighting changes because it's view dependent? So in other words, it's not just that you're rendering a point cloud that then gets splattered to have a fixed array.
No, we do. So there's two, I believe that I've only heard this from Vlado telling me what he's built. So I haven't seen it in practice. But there's two ways that he's gone about it. One is if you have a space, a volume space, like a room, like a living room, for example, you want to create a Gaussian splat in that living room, you define a volume within which you want that Gaussian splat to exist. So that means that anywhere within that volume, you can move the camera and you will get a good view of what you're doing. So yes, it is view dependent. It's not just from one point of view. It's from any point of view within that volume. The second way is to have a central object and then do a circle around it. So it's going in.
Which is, let's take your room example, which is like, if you think about it, like at first, when you say it, it sounds pretty simple. But actually, if you think about it, this is like no longer rendering. I mean, the fundamental point of a ray tracing is that I send rays from the eye out, right?
I send rays in all directions.
And ray tracing 101, though, is I like start at this point and I send rays out rather than like bouncing back towards an eye. And this isn't that, because clearly I can then look at it from any point of view. And then to move to the other case that you described of bringing in a Gaussian splat, is that to incorporate it with other elements that aren't, or just to use
there's so many use cases for this. I mean, like for, let's say from the architecture point of view, you can create a Gaussian splat of a city, right? From a drone photography or helicopter photography, and then just drop in your building. Right.
Which is
and then it'll ray trace it. It'll just ray trace it and it'll capture all of the buildings around it. So it's really great. Or from a car photography or car commercial, you can do a Gaussian splat of a street, right?
And then
have your car drive in and it'll reflect all the buildings as it's moving around. So it's unbelievably practical.
Daniel, what do you think about this Gaussian splat stuff? Do you see it as a major opportunity, or as a kind of a new shiny thing that people are just attracted to, like me, who like algorithms?
Well, I think that, like all nifty tech attracts like the shiny crowd. And I think that's great. But what I'm most interested in is how this make things work faster and also inspires new ways to tell stories and look at stuff. And so like even the way that splats break when you move out of the perspective line, like creates new ideas visually. And so like technologically, like it's fascinating. And so the technological answer for me as a filmmaker is like what looks best that works fastest, because like you can always sacrifice a little bit of one to make sure you get it done on time, or you can balance these things out. But you need to work creatively with something in order for it to be a great tool. And like for a long time, a lot of this stuff you're sort of fighting uphill against the tool. And I think that Gaussian splats are the first things I've seen in a while, and a lot of AI is like where it's really giving ideas back to you and letting you think more creatively about how to work.
I mean, I obviously
Especially,
agree with. Sorry, go on.
Sorry. I just want to say real quick, because if you go to a space and you do a photogrammetry of it, you can get something, and then yes, you can relight it, etc. But it's extremely, there's a lot of work that needs to go in after that. If you do a Gaussian splat, no, you can't relight it, but it will look correct from many different angles and give you a lot of freedom to do things.
It's the freedom that makes the difference creatively. You know,
and
like
if I
you
can
really
get a
want to be able
Gaussian
to work
splat
fast.
of an environment, and then boom, it's on an LED wall. And it costs me like a couple hours of time, and that's it. And it looks perfect. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be deliberately argumentative for the purposes of debate. So Daniel, the thing that missed, like you just said then, and I agree with what you're saying, but you, again, being deliberately argumentative, you were saying, oh, well, you know, what looks the best and can be done the quickest. But I would, some of you listening to this, I might say, well, that's just, I'm going to do an inference. I'm just going to do a full on, you know, video language model, like a, you know, a Mid-Journey, you know, whatever, because that's going to look really, really good, and I can do that really, really quickly. Surely the missing dimension to your points is control, because
I'm totally agree with you. There's no argument there at all. I think that because like this is the problem. Like where, say, for instance, the AI tools that are coming on board right now, they're all unbelievable. Like there's some really, really, truly amazing stuff, but the control levels are way down, you know, and you want to be able to have, you want to be able to replicate things. You want to be able to have, like, be able to depend on the tech to recreate the things that you know you want already, right? And so the pipeline that it's like the pipeline in my mind creatively has to work. Like I don't want tools that are um, too variable where I don't know what I'm going to get, right? Even if it's a wonderful, incredibly inventive, photorealistic, you know, final image, like if I can't get that twice, then that ruins my day, you know?
I mean, Daniel, I think there's an argument to be said that the video language models, the, you know, the image creation tools are getting spectacularly good, and really just jaw-dropping considering, you know, how realistic they are. But in a sense, they're like you've got an infinite stock library. In the old days, we'd go and look in the stock library and say, well, that looks pretty good. It's not exactly the actor I'd cast, but, you know, he's the guy that I'll use for this shot because I can get the stock footage and it's cheaper and it's easier. But, you know, I'd like my actor. And, oh, well, you'd have to shoot it yourself to get your actor. And I almost feel like we're at that point at the moment where it's like, and I know that you can submit images to get a visualization inferred with somebody, but generally it feels a bit like the way that stock library would give you something good, but it was their interpretation of what was good. I always feel like that's what's happening with the AI at the moment.
Yeah, like I would say like there's a couple of angles on this. One is that like I think that there's a weird push to let the AI try to do the creative work for you. And that's a useless way to look at stuff. Like you need to be able to be the final word on every inch of what you see. Like the creativity comes from you no matter what tool you're using. And if you're letting, like, stock photography is bad because you have no control over the creativity of it. Like you can take elements from it. You can say like, I'm going to clip out this dude's hat and this earring and this, then I can assemble a collage. And the collage aspect is where the art comes in because I'm being creative with these elements. But if you're just like, I guess I'll take that, you know, like that's the only picture of a guy in a hat we have. So I guess that's the angle. Then you're not contributing your art to it at all. Right. And so having the control, the refined control of all those elements, so I can say what the final image is myself, is what keeps me an artist. Like that's the thing you need.
Yeah, I recently posted, somebody posted a an AI video, which was spectacularly good. And just in terms of what it looked like and not looking like, people had 7 fingers. But I said in a post on LinkedIn, I very rarely watch an AI video to its end. In this particular case, I was commenting that I did because it had a song and it had a kind of an arc. But I realized that one of the problems I think and look, to be fair, this is the same. Stu Mashewicz once had an insightful comment. He said, if you ever get sent a stop motion show reel that somebody's done, like amazing stock, the first thing you say is, oh my God, this is incredible. Look how amazing this is. But almost invariably you fast forward to the end, because once you've kind of got the idea,
you get the idea.
It's just like, time lapse is great, but at some point you're like, I see the clouds coming over the mountain. That looks awesome, but then I'm going to scrub it, right? Does anything else happen? Right. And I feel like that's at AI at the moment. We don't, like, the control aspect that I mentioned before is to get something engaging in the narrative, so that there's actually a reason.
The movie comes from you. The movie comes from you. Like me, if you're not telling a story, if you're not actually letting, like, if you're not giving something that's interesting, there's no tool in the world that'll make what you're making interesting for you. It won't happen.
Yeah.
Right. And so the wild thing about AI is that when you brought up actors, this is actually a really great way to think about this, I think, is like, like there's this story, I don't know if this is true. This is a story I heard while I was working on Zodiac, David Fincher's movie. It was that Fincher, when he's working with Robert Downey Jr. and what's his name? Jake Gyllenhaal, in the same scene many, many times. And these guys have 2 entirely different modes of acting, right? Fincher, as you know, does famous for a zillion takes, right? Gyllenhaal he gets to the place that Fincher wants and then stays there. And he just repeats the same thing. He's like, we got it. We're just going to keep on doing it until everything else is correct. Whereas Downey Jr. is a loose cannon, and everything he gives you is terrific, but it's all different. Right. Those are the 2. That's the sliding scale with what you want from a tool. Right. You want the Jake Gyllenhaal control. So when push comes to shove, you can say what's what. Right. But AI does give you the loose cannon edge that can inspire you and say, like, oh, that's a really good idea. I hadn't thought of that. And you can, if you can lasso that and ride it, it'll break new territory within you to deliver great stuff. But without the control half, loose cannons are loose cannons. And that's the area that we're in right now.
Daniel, that's so insightful. I think I'm going to steal it and use it.
Please do. I can't vouch for the veracity of the actual Zodiac tale, but that's what I heard when I was working on it.
Can I ask you real quick, what was the music video that you saw, Mike?
It was I'll post it in the show notes. It was a sort of satirical piece about using AI, and it had this sort of country singer singing all the way through it. And
because Rory Robinson, if you haven't seen his work, Daniel and I have been going through a lot of this. We analyze a lot of these things because this is what we love to do. And Rory Robinson has probably the best use of these tools. He has figured out how to harness what is capable and turn it into something that is not just looks like another shot.
See, the trouble is, Chris, like, that changes so quickly. Like, honestly, Zap posted 2 days ago the most incredible Nano Bananas sequence with Scarlett Johansson and his son in an action film. And he even posted the prompts that got you from one to the other. And it's jaw-droppingly good.
That's true, but that's great. And if I'm going to just say that if it can stand those tests of time and not just be, that's a really cool demo, then they're great. And I think what Rory has done is something that's going to be good no matter what. Yeah. But that's the point, right? Like right now, what was the other analogy that Daniel told me? It's like, you remember when the D5s first came out, the Canon D5s, and then everyone got these digital cameras and they were doing like videos with them. And they're like, look at this, it's going to completely change movies forever. And all you saw was
field. Look at this, I can do this. Yeah, great.
You mean the 5D Mark III type?
5D,
yeah.
And they were just doing little videos of like short depth of field things. And no one actually made a movie because they didn't.
Stanley Kubrick didn't put out film tests. So you're just like, look what I can do with this, Panavision. Like, I don't care, but tell me, make The Shining. Like, that's what you have to do. And I think
Yes.
that's the real thing. Is
Though
like,
in fairness to filmmakers, right, this is happening so quickly that, I mean, we saw inklings of this stuff appearing now, but like
Sure.
we probably have a 18 to 24 month window before technology now gets validated by companies and is able to be kind of used in a theatrical context.
Welcome to the Wild West, man.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think it's happening so fast that
Yeah.
I don't think filmmakers have even had a chance to kind of make something
Well,
to make
I'm going to push back on this a little bit, right? Is that is our job as filmmakers. Like, we can't be afraid of new creative opportunities. Like, we have to go like, how do I ride that bull? How do I do it? I got to figure this out. I want to tackle it. You can't be like, I don't
I couldn't agree with you more.
I
totally agree with you. Yeah.
It's our responsibility to tackle it.
Yeah. It's also our responsibility to find out the thing that it is that it didn't know it could be. Like my example is like when they came out with the iPhone, I mean, it was revolutionary in every respect, right? But I so rarely use it as a phone. I mean, like I just use it as so many other things.
Right.
And so at the moment, we're all sort of trying to replicate with some of these tools what we did before with a camera and an actor. Right. And at some point, I'm like, well, I could just still shoot an actor, right? That hasn't gone away. I can still do that. Mm-hmm. So what can I not do that I could now use this technology for? And that may not be a narrative, linear film, right? It may be
something new that we haven't done yet.
Yeah.
Like that's exciting, right? I mean, like it's good to be able to have, like, I want to be able to shoot an actor doing a thing. Yes, I want to be able to do that. But if this tool can do all this other weird stuff, like I feel as an artist, it's my responsibility to push the boundaries on that, to break it and find out what else it does.
Yeah. But also at a business level, in addition to the artistic level, like when the internet was breaking, and I'm old enough to remember it, like Microsoft came out with Web TV, which was basically meant to be network TV on the internet, right? Complete flop.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And YouTube came along and said, we're not going to make anything. We're just going to actually let you post videos, but we're not going to make any content. And that was like completely against the network model where you're all about making the content, right? And they were like, no, anyone.
That's exactly like Encarta versus Wikipedia too, right?
Yeah, but,
exactly.
But at the time that they did it, it was like, didn't seem like that would turn into one of the most valuable companies in the history of mankind, right? Yep. So there's going to be a new thing that hopefully artistic filmmakers come up with that isn't just redoing what we've done before, cheaper, easier, and faster. And that'll be the thing that is the kind of killer app, the thing that ignites. But Chris, I really want to back up on one thing that you mentioned, which was the idea of using Gaussian splats for real-time and virtual production and putting it up on screens. And there are probably people listening that were like, wait, that sounded really interesting. Well, get back to that. So I'm one of those people, right? So,
sure.
So Chaos is doing work in virtual production and in LED volumes. Can you talk to me a bit about that and what was happening at SIGGRAPH?
Absolutely. Thanks for doing it. I mean, obviously, we talked a bit about Arena last year and how we were launching that. And just a quick refresher, Arena is our virtual production tool that we developed. Is essentially a system that enables multiple instances of Vantage, which is our real-time ray tracer, to render across an LED wall and basically act as a virtual production tool. The big difference between what Arena is versus other virtual production tools is that it doesn't require a game engine to do it. We can go straight from your 3D application to an LED wall. And what we have been doing, what we've sort of been pushing for this, while we continue to develop a lot of features, which I can talk to you about some of the other ones, but the big one we pronounced at SIGGRAPH was that we are supporting Gaussian splats now as native things to Vantage, which enables us to use Vantage or Gaussian splats for virtual production for in-camera VFX. But we've also announced that we are supporting natively USD and Material X. And that means that you can take any asset that outputs USD and Material X using any render, including not V-Ray, right? To be able to go to an LED wall. So if you're like, for example, in Houdini with Arnold, and you want to be able to get that into onto an LED wall, it's just a matter of minutes to be able to export that data and load it natively into Vantage and therefore Arena onto a wall. So that was a big announcement for us. And I think it was sort of a big thing that we wanted to do. We wanted to make it simple to democratize that process for everyone. And because Arena is a much simpler sort of tool to use compared to having to convert data for game engines, and you don't need any special pipeline. In fact, you can use whatever pipeline you want. And I think that's the tagline I was telling people is like, your pipeline, your choice, right? You don't need an entire department just to make sure that your data will play in real time.
So at SIGGRAPH, NVIDIA was showing real-time denoising stuff. Presumably, you have to have real-time denoising because otherwise I can't see how you can get ray tracing in real time. Can you talk to that a bit?
That is correct. That is correct. Yes. So we use their denoiser, which is the ray reconstruction denoiser. Vantage was built within a system that basically can use it natively, right? So DLSS 3.5, which came out in 2023, was the first version of this, and it used their denoiser, which is called ray reconstruction. And ray reconstruction essentially is you give it an extremely noisy image, and it'll figure out all the rest of it. So we jokingly say that 1 out of 8 pixels is real. The rest is AI generated.
Just to let you know, like when I first saw this, when Chris was like, "Oh, and here it is before the denoiser," it literally looked like a TV set tuned to a dead channel in like Poltergeist. I was like, I can't believe this makes a picture. Yeah, it's shocking how good it is.
Yeah. So I think it uses denoising to do that. For sure.
Yeah, I think that
and
denoising is
too.
one of the greats.
Too. Yeah,
I was going to say that these are some of the really huge, massive, actual realized gains from AI and machine learning. Like denoising and upresing are two things that have been hugely successful, and now for quite some time, right? I mean, it's not like denoising is new. I hear people sort of talking about AI coming into the film industry. And I'm like, hey, it's been here for years. Like denoising is not a new thing, and it's used all the time. But the speed at which you're doing it is now facilitating a new opportunity, both creatively and from pipeline point of view. And that's what I think is really stunning. Because when you hit that real time, you actually open up a whole different world to opportunities.
For sure. And it is actually quite astonishing, right? Because let's go back to like this thing that's important is this analogy was given to me by a guy named Ankit Patel at NVIDIA, and it was a perfect analogy when he's talking about the differences between rasterized rendering and ray tracing, right? And the rationale he gives, like with rasterized rendering, pixels are free, meaning that doesn't matter how much you scale the image, you're not going to affect the performance that much, right? And with ray tracing, polygons are free, meaning no matter how many polygons you throw at the thing, it's not going to affect the performance that much. And what the reverse is also true, right? So with rasterized rendering, the more polygons you throw at it, the slower everything gets. And with ray tracing, the more pixels you give, the more rays it has to cast, and therefore your performances. But by basically using the denoiser and the upscaler, you've killed that problem. Right? Because you can cast fewer rays at a smaller resolution, and the AI is going to fill in the rest. So now we get the best of both worlds, because now we can render things really nice, high resolution, looks great. And we can throw trillions of polygons at it, and it doesn't affect the performance, which is kind of amazing.
And Daniel, one of the advantages of this has to be the fact that even though we obviously aim for final pixels quite often on an LED volume, you're more than likely also to be replacing images. So you get great contact lighting on people, you get great contextualization, but then you're going to replace the background anyway. But the replacing with a really high quality offline V-Ray render kind of is an easier step, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like everything, like the steps along the way all have to add up to the image that you want, right? And so like when you capture the actors, like you're not going to be re-rendering this, you get the light, right? And when you do finals in V-Ray, they're flawless. So ultimately, when you have a composite of everything working brilliantly, then everything is as good looking as it gets, right?
Yes, but the difference between the real time and the V-Ray one is very small.
Right. So this is where I'm going, right? It's like that what you get on the set with this, like for almost everything you shoot is 98% of what you need. You're looking at there's we are, because I mean we are focused on an actor. Like you're focused on telling the story. You're not looking to see whether the TV set's in focus.
Sure.
Like everything is being everything that is being represented is looking great, exactly at the level it needs to be, because our attention is on the things that matter. So like when you have to do an absolute flawless final render, which we did say for our V-Ray Western, like of like the town, like well, that's a separate render, and we spend a long time rendering it and polishing and comping it, and that's fantastic. But when you're shooting on the day, like we were getting incredible material out the train windows and all this stuff. You don't have to touch it at all.
Yeah. So you've touched on now the Western, and I would be remiss if I didn't, as I've got you on the podcast, to just touch on that. I mean, it was just explain what Western you're referring to. Obviously, we touched on it, Chris and I, before, but it's obviously a fan favorite and one of my favorites.
Well, this is a blast because Chris and I made the original V-Ray IRL 10 years ago or so, and
12 years ago,
12 years
13
ago
years, 14 years ago.
And we made that on
the bank robbery video,
yeah,
yes.
the bank robbery video, right? And which is an absolute shoestring, like love letter to everything that Chaos and Vlado had put together, and like it was done for fun, but with huge enthusiasm and love. And for a long time, we were just talking about, it would just come up all the time, like we should do a sequel, and finally, we spoke with Vlado and Chaos, and
Vlado said he wants to do a sequel.
he said he wants to do this. Like, let's just do it and test out some new stuff and see what works. Like, let's use it as a staging ground for like for all the stuff that we now can do, right? And to show how much we've leveled up as filmmakers, and start hinting at where we want to go. Both where the technology wants to go, where we want to go as filmmakers, and talk about where we see the industry's at, and talk about where the industry has been and what we can be inspired from there. And so we sort of took all these elements and reframed it in our favorite genre, which is a Western, and sort of made this comic, slapstick, ridiculous second version of a bank robbery, only now with super high technology as opposed to the shoestring tech
and an amazing cast of cameos.
That's
wall
right.
to wall with famous tech people, like, and people that you would never expect to see in the same frame, and we got them in the same frame in cowboy
like
hats.
Marcos and Vlado in the same frame.
exactly. And it was just an incredible blast. Like it was such a celebration for everybody involved. And we had such a good time putting it together. I think that's what ends up on screen in the end, and we were really proud of it.
Well, we'll put a link to that. We'll put a link to the video in the show notes. We have discussed it before in the past, but it is worth mentioning again. Hey, getting back to SIGGRAPH, one of the other things that I thought would be interesting to get your opinion on is the increasingly valid move to open source, which the open source community and seems to be continuing with more things being added sort of in a fairly steady stream. What's your feeling about the industry attitude to that?
I think it's great. Honestly, I think it's really cool. Chaos is a member of the Alliance of Open USD, and we are very excited about that. I love the fact that we are now working in USD natively with our renderers. The big question has always been, how do we get our shaders across there? Material X was showing a lot of promise, but we were sort of waiting to see how the politics of Material X work out. But it seems to be working pretty well at this point. So we're working with Material X as well. But I do love the fact that people are finally starting to embrace things like USD, because it's, this, or anyone working in visual effects or anyone working in any kind of 3D data knows that translating data is the biggest pain in the ass that anyone has to deal with. And we've been working with FBX for some reason for so long, or some random formats that make no sense. We really needed something that makes a lot more sense. And USD seems to be really calling to be the solution for a lot of people. And we're very excited to be part of that. So that's a big deal for us. But it's not just USD that's actually been exciting for us. The other big exciting part has been the Hydra delegates as well. So Hydra, as you know, is an open source frame buffer in a way that we've been embracing, and we've actually got Hydra delegates working for both V-Ray and Vantage now. It's going to have its own Hydra delegate, and that means that any 3D solution that uses a Hydra frame buffer will be able to much more easily incorporate our renders within them as well. So.
And just finishing up our SIGGRAPH part before I do want to come back to your company, the production sessions, that's always been something that SIGGRAPH has been interesting about, not least of which is because people will show stuff at SIGGRAPH that they won't show anywhere else, or at least they won't put on the internet. Were there any sort of production sessions this year that stood out for you with any particular talks that you saw, or did you get a chance to see any?
I did a chance to see a few. I'll tell you, just on an overall SIGGRAPH note, the thing that was challenging is that they scaled down the size, the footprint of SIGGRAPH to some extent, but the crowds were still bigger than the footprint, shall we say? So it was actually really hard to get into a lot of sessions. It was standing room only, and people turned away for almost every session that I went to. So that was a bit of a challenge. Nonetheless, there were some exciting production presentations that were there. That were very, very interesting. I sort of been asking, one of the ones was Sinners. Sinners, I thought, did some really good, interesting presentations, especially considering how they pulled that movie off. I thought they did some incredible work in terms of trying to work so closely with their DP to try to match things. And it was an interesting conversation with Michael Ralla specifically about how, he was trying to go against a fix it in post mentality. He was working closely with the DP to get the look that the DP wanted on that. And Autumn was a fantastic DP. But that being said, I think it was really interesting to sort of see how people are operating within things. One of the things that someone noted on the Chaos team that I didn't really notice until I went, that's true. A lot of people were talking about their pipelines and the tools they use. And a lot of them were talking about how you hardly saw anyone mention any Autodesk products within it. It was a lot of people were talking about side effects and how they've been using side effects to do things. And I think that is specifically a testament to the fact that tools like the side effects tools are embracing USD. And I think that USD has become like the format that is basically making the pipeline that people want to use. So I think if you have a tool that makes using USD good and easy, then that's going to be embraced by the community for sure.
Yeah, it is an interesting transition because there was a point where it was all dominated by Autodesk, starting with Maya, but working its way through to compositing tools and others. So now I wanted to come back to CG Garage. You've kind of alluded a couple of times to wanting to do new things, but for those that are listening, obviously I've been lucky enough to be a guest on CG Garage a couple of times myself. The format I would characterize as you're interested in people and their journey as much as the technology that they're deploying. I don't know if you think that's fair or not, but is that still your mantra moving forward?
It is. I think that, there's no reason to remove that as part of what's going on with CG Garage. I think that the interviews I have with some really incredible people, including yourself, and finding out their journey through this process, I think is very inspirational, especially for people who are getting into the industry and they want to know how to get into it. You hear random stories like, I got my job in the industry by answering a Craigslist ad, so you never really know how people got into what they do, which I think is a fascinating story, and everyone has their origin story. Nonetheless, I think that there's opportunities for us to look at more than that. So I think we're going to start adding a couple of other types of content in terms of they're doing
into
things.
CG Garage or as a sort of a companion podcast. Okay, so you're going to expand what that podcast does rather than a second podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. At least for now, I figure we can get even though I think it'll interest the same audience, right? I don't want to make two separate things, but I think we're going to do more things like some more roundtable discussions about things, right? So I think those are going to be not dissimilar from what we're doing right now. You know,
I was going to say this has been really interesting for getting those varied opinions. I totally applaud, and I think we need more of this kind of discussion. I'm a big believer that while there's a huge focus on TikTok and that sort of short delivery, the McNugget thing, so much of what we're discussing at the moment has nuance, and for nuance, you need time.
Yeah. Well, and if I can just build on that for a second, that because I think, I mean, SIGGRAPH is obviously it's like it is such a central show for focusing on like these are the legends that have held up the industry and the community, and like you're really getting valuable information, and this is fantastic. But I feel like it's even more important now to not just say, here are some people that are wonderful, you can aspire to be them, and and get ideas for how to make decisions in your own career, but rather to form like an actual filmmaking community with everyone in Hollywood, because and across the world, because like I feel that movies are changing so fast and the industry is constricting in very difficult ways for people, that it's getting harder and harder to really know how to surf these waves, and as you're saying, like with AI changing everything so quickly, like it's more to create like the kind of culture that came about in the 1970s with New Hollywood, where these are people that are not siloed off from each other anymore. Like these are indie filmmakers working with the big budget folks, everyone driving towards the same goal and helping each other create brand new, interesting art that changes things in a positive way.
Yeah, and right now we need more voices, because the problem is we have this tide of I mean, as was recently done in a press release for a new film, CG is for losers by a major Hollywood actor. And
right, yes.
And, to which I kind of say, well, every single top grossing film of all time, all 10 of them, VFX and animation. So, you can.
Yeah, I actually, I love that actor. He's an excellent actor. He's done some marvelous work. And his job is being an actor, and he does that wonderfully well. He doesn't know very much about the process of visual effects.
That's what it comes down to. Yeah. The number of actors that have had their makeup fixed, their hair fixed, their performance adjusted by lighting, and numerous other things, right to the point of having their asses reduced in size and their wrinkles taken away. That would really, it's a bit like saying, well, okay, guys, why don't you guys go on without makeup on and without VFX and just see how wonderful you look.
It's like, I always say that I think that when people accept, I mean, this goes for any award really at all, but like when actors accept a Best Actor award, for instance, like the first person they should thank is the editor who cut out all the bad takes. It's like, this is the thing is that I understand where because that was Christoph Waltz. I'm going to talk about him positively. Christoph Waltz, a wonderful actor, incredible actor, and seemingly very nice guy. Like I understand where he and folks like Guillermo del Toro are coming from, which is that like there is a feeling about craft that is emblematic of our love of the art, right? And the attachment that people have to craft is very, very strong, and I understand that. And like before I was in movies, like I was a freelance illustrator, a pen and ink illustrator, and the way that I try to explain like what craft means to me, right, is that craft isn't the art, right? Craft is the thing that that I'm using to deliver an image, right? So it asks me every day. The craft asks me, "I'm very difficult. How much do you want this image?" Like if you're painting in oils, for instance, oils notoriously difficult, right? It's going to be 10 years of painting in oils before you can paint in oils. And every day you wake up with an image in your mind, right? And you're like, I got to get this image out of my head. And I want it to be an oil painting. And oil paint says to you, well, I'm super hard. So how much do you want this? Is it what you want yet? Is it what you want yet? Is it what you want yet? And asks you every single day that you come back to it, right? And by asking you every single day, right, it is giving you the discipline to hold on to what you want and only accept the things that you believe you want to represent, right? By the time you become a master oil painter, the only thing that's coming out of your brush is your vision. That's it, right? And that is the discipline that you train yourself in. It isn't the quality of the oils, the brush, the canvas. It isn't the tools. It isn't the mechanism. It isn't Photoshop. It isn't AI. It is your sense as an artist of, is this what I've dreamed of? Is that the thing I want to see? And if you at any point say, I guess that's fine, you've blown it at the one thing you are responsible for doing. Right. And so when it comes to AI, like AI makes mediocrity super easy. And so people see an enormous volume of mediocrity. And so when Christoph Waltz talks about this stuff, he sees the mediocre stuff. And he's talking about CGI. For instance, I've heard so many people say, oh, CGI ruins movies, when they leave, some giant budget robot fantasy movie. And like, I guarantee you it was the cruddy script that ruined that movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's also like, it's pretty rare that you walk out of a movie and can, as a normal individual, understand the different components of what's gone into something. Right?
For sure.
Right.
So, it's easy to blame CGI, but by the same token, what I think I'm hearing from you guys is there's this sense that what is going to be modern filmmaking is going to be a new thing that involves technology. And so it's our responsibility to artistically develop that, find that, and explore that. And it's actually ridiculously naive to think that we should turn our back on that effectively. I'm not going to call it new cinema because I don't think cinema is the right word, but like new narrative. Whereas, of course, in doing that and embracing it, you don't have to kill everything else that's gone before it, right? Like it's still possible for people to like Formula One car racing and also watch horse racing, right? You don't have to kill everything that's gone before it to have something new. But by the same token,
is a company that does stop motion animation. It's not dead. It's an art. It's a craft.
It also uses CG to do it.
It also uses CG
to do it. Yeah, exactly.
But that's fine. But I have to say, I used to get very, very upset, Mike, when I remember back, I call it the Life of Pi days, as I'm sure you're aware of. But when the Hollywood would like just basically crap all over CG and say it was a horrible experience. It's much better when it was practical, et cetera, et cetera. We've heard this a million times from a million directors. But I used to get very upset about it, about how naive that comment is. But I would look at what they were doing back in the 2013 era, and these DPs and directors, they would walk into a giant blue volume, film some people, and not know anything of what was going to happen behind them. Didn't even know what lighting to use or anything. That's a horrible filmmaking experience. Of course, they hated the visual effects. They had lost control of their film, and it was not fair to them to do that. No matter how good the visual effects are, you can't blame the visual effects artists for saying this CG is the problem. The problem is that basically the studios would just let that decision happen in post rather than give the film to the director. And I think that's one thing that certainly in-camera VFX does, is it enables filmmakers to see what the hell they're shooting.
Well, you have to make a decision in the moment, right? You have to make a decision.
But this fix it in post mentality is destroying things. People are going in, they don't even have a script. They're just film it and we'll figure it out later.
But part of the reason for that is because the top 10 films of all time have had visual effects in it, right? So if you're not very good with a script, if you're not very good with actors, and then you're going to say, well, I need to make a high-grossing film. Look, all the high-grossing films have VFX. I should have VFX too, which, of course, the VFX won't fix the script and the actors.
No, ever. Exactly right. Exactly right.
So, and also, let's not walk away from the fact there are some pretty dodgy types in the entertainment industry, right? And some of them just are trying to work out how to make something for commercial purposes, and they're looking for any equation that'll get them that. And they think if they put a lot of VFX in, somehow miraculously
Well, I can
fix
tell
it.
you that
There are people that say that I've gone on YouTube and people are saying, "Oh, Jurassic World was a terrible movie," and I was like, I agree with them, it's a terrible movie, and then they say because it used CG, and then the old one used practical, which is a complete bullshit statement because they used CG obviously in the original one, and they used practical, and it looks beautiful because they use both.
Actually,
and the CG
no, I'd actually go further and say in the original, the dinosaurs that were least believable were the
puppets.
ones. Yeah, I'm sorry.
But
That's the worst example.
That's true. That's true too. That's true. But also the fact is, the visual effects in Jurassic World were spectacular.
Right.
The problem was it was a weird story.
Yeah, these are a bit like when you make a bad movie, your VFX won't save you. And this is more and more true because now, my kids have grown up seeing nothing but flawless VFX. And when I see what like my youngest son watches, I always bring this up. Chris is going to get tired of hearing me say this, but there's a YouTube channel that he watched that he showed me where it gets 4 million views per episode, and it's a woman who is just relating her Dungeons and Dragons game that she plays with her friends. She's telling it like a story with cruddy sketches, like just pencil sketches, and she's not even a great artist, right? But the characters are compelling, the story is compelling, right? That people are so used to visual effects that they don't actually care whether they're any good. They only care now if the story is any good. That's the thing that younger generations want is quality because they're numb to effects. Effects can be good, they can be bad. But if it is a great story with mediocre VFX, it's still a great story.
Well, we've drifted away from where I wanted to be, but it was an interesting.
Let's get back to where you wanted to
go.
Yeah,
go ahead.
But no, it's fine. It's just I think all three of us are strongly opinionated on this issue. But I dare say that everybody listening to this podcast is nodding their heads in agreement. So in summary, right? I just wanted to finish off on the company side of things because we just have one point that I wanted to close on. Is the company just doing CG Garage, or are you doing other stuff? So just quickly finish up by telling me what the rest of it is.
Yeah, it's actually CG Garage was not an afterthought, but it fit into our mantra. What basically Monstrous Moonshine is essentially a media company of some kind or a production company. So based on what we've done with Ray Tracing for the Win, which was the short film we talked about, the Western we did last year. We're expanding and trying to see what we can do beyond that and actually develop more productions that way. Now we're not doing them just for demo purposes. We're actually looking at doing real movie productions and actually doing that as well.
And what's your distribution target? Is this something for YouTube? Is it something for
No, we're looking at theatrical
streamers?
distribution and all. We're streamers and stuff like that. And we've actually have connections in that area, which I can't talk too much about, but this is a serious production company. Let's just put it that way. At the same time, we've got an early development that we're working on right now for a feature, and that feature is essentially becoming a case study for within Chaos Labs. So I'm actually crossing the streams, right? I'm producing a film and I'm actually using it to test new technology at Chaos. And this is all under Vlado's blessing, who I work directly under Vlado. So, and it's turning out really cool. So doing this production idea, it's the best. We knew this from when we did the short last year. It's the best way to test things. It's not just to do one shot here, one shot there, to actually go through the entire pacing of the thing. And so we're expanding that now into an entire production pipeline and sort of looking at, I was just saying your pipeline, your choice. I'm trying to find a way where we can showcase people here's the simple way that we can create a feature film and do this whole thing in one go. And we're doing this because we feel that the technology we're developing specifically is going to open up the door to a lot more independent filmmakers, where things like virtual production, which always seem like an unattainable, too expensive, only reserved for the $100 million films, we're going to prove that wrong. We're going to show how we can use that technology and open up the door to technology to a lot of people. And we're going to do it by leading by example through one of the things we're producing at Monstrous Moonshine.
Yeah, I can say like with it, I won't give any specifics about it, but it's the stuff that we've already done is from the ground up filmmaking and story based, and then the technology helps us do that. And so you can
Faster.
tell whether you're making a good movie immediately. Like that's the brilliance of the technology we're using is like you're not looking at something that you go, is this going to look good? You're watching it going, this is a great movie we're making. You can
Right.
tell right away, and I think that that's where the more technology can help us do that, the better the movies become.
And we're going to be talking about that on the podcast too. So
Excellent.
as we're developing this, we are going to be showing people, here's what we did even before the movie's released, right? So it's like, these are the things we've done. So people who listen to the podcast are going to go through that journey with us, and we're going to let them know about all that stuff.
Well, thanks for taking time to talk to us today, guys. We really appreciate it. Hopefully, once the film's done, you can come back and we can discuss it in more and geek out a bit on some of those technical aspects. But it's always good to talk to you guys. So thank you so much, and we appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Well, thanks, guys, for introducing us to Monstrous Moonshine, as well as sharing some highlights from SIGGRAPH, which, like Mike, I was also sadly unable to travel to. And I wish you had the best of success in your new venture. Now, for those of you who are listening to FX Podcast, I want to remind you once again that it's also available as a video on our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to the channel and know whenever we release a new video, and it's actually a really big help in getting us more viewers on the platform. So if you can do it, we'd really appreciate it. Well, that's it for this episode. For Mike Seymour, I'm John Montgomery. Thanks for listening to or watching this FX Podcast.